Hi everybody, this is Brazy. Welcome to a Speak Your Truth video blog. Well, it's time to de-Americanize, according to leading officials in the Chinese media. That's right, the Chinese press have decided that things are getting so drastic in the United States that the empire is starting to crumble, that we should reduce our exposure on a global scale so as not to be affected by it. And we should start doing that now. Now, the first thing we can do is we can start a new imperial currency. Now, we all know what has happened since day dot, when Portugal started with the first imperial currency, then it moved on to Spain, and then I believe it moved on to London, and etc., and then the USA. And ever since then, we've had drama after drama after drama. Now, I wonder who China is expecting to be the new imperial currency. I think it is all getting a little bit spooky. But then they followed this up immediately afterwards by saying we should also have a new world order. Now, I am hoping that something was missed or lost in translation, because I think most of us would agree the last thing we want to do is have a new world order, because this literally could be all a part of the plan. In fact, I only heard Alex Jones say probably last week that the Chinese were infiltrated by the Illuminati and the globalists are taking over, and all this kind of ranting and raving that he's doing. I think he's on too much of that nice and iodine or whatever it is that he's taking at the moment, because he's getting really crazed and energized at the moment. And I'm hoping half the things that he's saying just don't come true. But in saying that, have a look at this article about the Chinese. I've got a couple of them. So there you have it. It's time to de-Americanize. But are things really that bad in the United States? Are things really starting to crumble out of control? Well, let's start and have a look at some of the facts. Some of the things that aren't going so well, and then I'll let you make up your own decision as usual. First of all, last week, or in the last few days I should say, we had their EBT cards, or their SNAP cards, or as you would probably know them best, the cards that 13.86% of families in the United States. That's right, 13.86% of the families. So you're looking at about sort of, you're looking at sort of 40, 50 million people in the United States are now on electronic food stamps. Well, in 17 states in the United States, these cards went down. And when they went down with a big bang. They only went down for a few hours. But as Gerald Celente often says, he says, people that have got nothing to lose, well, they lose it. And believe me, they lost it with gusto. We saw Walmarts throughout Louisiana and a couple of other states filled up trolleys, going to the checkout, and then being told, sorry, these cards, there's a computer glitch, etc. We effectively almost had a riot in these Walmart stores. Have a look at these articles. So then when the EBT or SNAP cards or food stamp cards came online again, thanks to a Xerox glitch, as they like to call it, or is it a drill getting ready for something more sinister, they literally had an unlimited amount on their cards. And there were other stores, again in Louisiana, I believe, where they allowed people to just, without knowing how much money they had in their cards, they allowed them to go through and get their essentials. Well, a bit like essential items, I guess, with the government shutdown, where 83% of the government is still working or deemed essential, these people deemed about 10 trolley loads each of shopping to be their essential items. So all the shelves in Walmart were absolutely laid bare. So it really does make you wonder what would happen if a real drama was to kick in the United States. If some sort of, you hear the rumors of a Stuxnet drill or some sort of hacking was to go down, or if God forbid the grid was to go down. I don't know if this is all part of this FEMA drill which is coming up to give people an idea of what would happen in an ensuing disaster, be it man-made or naturally made, etc., etc. But it was a bit of a concern to show the state of the way humans would behave in the United States. So to me, that was probably one of the first things. And on the lighter side, to show that the United States is losing its power, Hillary Clinton was over in London very recently, and she arrived in a motorcade, and she pulled up on the side of the road, and a parking inspector jumped out and decided to give her a parking ticket to the value of about 135 Australian dollars. Now, when the Secret Service jumped out of their van to try and stop this, he didn't blink. He didn't budge. He wasn't afraid of Hillary Clinton, and he wasn't afraid of the Secret Service, and he simply said, Britain needs the money. I've got to do my job. It doesn't matter who you are. You've got to pay if you park illegally. Now, I find that extraordinary. Here we have someone who is clearly a puppet for the Illuminati or Dark Cabal or New World Order or whatever you want to call it. And they're not treated with any respect anymore. So maybe it's true. Maybe we are starting to see some crumbling effect occur against the United States and their minions. But let's go a step further. Let's now have a look at what's going on in the US military. Remember, this is the finest, most heavily funded, largest military, technologically advanced military in the world. And not to mention the fact that the country has so many nuclear weapons. Well, in the last couple of weeks, we've seen the #1 man in charge, this Michael Carey character, one of the generals, get stood down for personal reasons. That's right. The man in charge of the entire US nuclear arsenal got stood down or fired for personal reasons. Never happened before. Now, we don't know exactly what's going on, and you might think at first, oh, well, you know, obviously there's something they don't want to tell us, but he's obviously done something incredibly wrong. But it seems he just didn't follow some sort of orders that he didn't want to follow. Now, this might coincide with the fact that Lindsey Graham came out and said that South Carolina was going to be attacked unless we went to war in Syria. And then, of course, there is the InfoWars following this story about how there's all these nuclear weapons that just literally went off base, came out of cotton wool and mothballs, and went off base without anybody's knowledge. So you're starting to see things unraveling even at the highest level. Now, you might think to yourself, well, this is an isolated incident, and Alex Jones does these isolated incidents all the time. But this was followed directly by the #2 in charge of all of their nuclear weapons get fired or get stood down for playing with, they put it, counterfeit or fake chips at a casino. Now, I hate to tell you this, but the entire Federal Reserve is playing with fake chips, and therefore Timothy Geithner is playing with fake chips along with Barack Obama, and they're trying to raise their debt ceiling with fake American dollars because they just print them. And they're having a go at this guy who's obviously gone to the casino, and now they've squashed this charge of fake chips playing at a casino. So there is something definitely going on here. And this was only a week after, and have a look at this article. The first time since the Vietnam War that we actually saw two generals or a general get stood down for tactical reasons. I mean, these are guys that had 35,000 troops at their disposal. It was then reduced down to 7,500 troops. And of course, the Taliban have walked into a secluded base, and they blew up, they killed a few people, God bless their soul. And then they've also blew up about 6 expensive warplanes. So Harrier jets. Now, I'm sure this thing sort of happens. I mean, when the US go and kill people with their drone strikes and take out an entire wedding, they turn around and look at each other and look at the world and say, oh, it was collateral damage. But when they get invaded by the Taliban, they say, oh no, someone's head's got to roll. Well, see, this is what I find very disturbing. when all of 20 members of SEAL Team 6 get blown out of the sky by the Taliban, I didn't actually see any generals' heads roll. So all of these things start to get into place now where you're starting to think, I think we're being told a whole load of nonsense. And I think the entire military is in fact starting to unravel. Which then takes me back to one of the broadest conspiracy theories that I actually saw, which was in regard to this US naval yard mass shooting, where people were saying, oh, maybe he was an operative, an MK Ultra type character who went in and shot up a bunch of people. Now, the reality is, the story that was floating around at the time was that there is really only one sort of type of special marshal that can ever go in and arrest a president. Now, the rumor was that there was going to be some sort of nuclear, believe it or not, and this is where it sounds bizarre, some sort of nuclear false flag event that was going to go down in Washington, D.C. Now, these guys were all getting together to make sure they had their information straight to then be able to go and arrest the president for treason. Now, the only people that can do that is the CID or the NCIS, as long as it's related, of course, to the Navy or the Marines. Now, they were apparently all meeting on that particular day on the second floor. This was the story. And they were on their way to arrest the president. And someone broke in, and they're the people who actually got assassinated or shot. Now, when I read all that, I thought, oh, look, this is a really good sort of Tom Clancy novel, God rest his soul. It seems everybody's dying. And I thought to myself, this has just got to be totally crazy. There's no way of proving this. But then when you start to add everything up and you start to think to yourself, wow, there have been a lot of strange activities going on in the United States. And then you start to see all the generals that are starting to be fired so that you make sure that people follow orders. I think you could effectively say the United States is in a fair bit of trouble at the moment, and maybe China could be onto something. Or is this just all a complete setup so that we will accept a new imperial currency and potentially moving us closer to this one world currency, and as they put it plainly, it allows us to get closer to this new world order? Well, I would go a step further, and I would say, is it also possible that all the white hats may be either being pulled out of, that have been discovered as a result of this sort of, you might say, a mutiny on Barack Obama? Or is it possible they're getting rid of all the black hats and leaving all the white hats, so which will bring us closer to the sort of world that I would prefer to live in? Now, these are the questions I want to throw out to you. It'll be very interesting over the next few days to see if we get more money for this debt ceiling. Personally, I think it is a charade. I think they want to take, I think the US government and those above them and the banks above them want to just take us right to the precipice and then continue on. But I think there's enough white hats in there at the moment that could really cause these guys problems. Because if you can take away their money supply, you could potentially take us to this new world that some of us want to live in, where all of our personal sovereignty is respected and all of our individual states and countries are in fact respected. We could possibly get there, but this is just my opinion. This is Brazy. Have yourself a great day.